So my name is Anthony Vigliotti. I am the Chief Product Officer here at Adlib Software. It's my pleasure today to talk to you about some of the workflow and business process optimization that we can do, particular to life sciences, clinical trial, drug submission, dossier type information. I'm joined today by Kunal Bargotra. Kunal, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, for sure. So I am the Senior Solutions Engineer here at Adlib. I've been with the organization for just over 5.5 years now, and I would just like to echo everything Anthony said, and I'm super excited to get into it.
I appreciate it. So Kunal and I will be having a conversation today. This is trying to stray away from the very PowerPoint heavy slides. The majority of our time today will be spent walking through what we believe to be a day in the life of someone in this clinical trial space. We've learned this space through 20 plus years of history at Adlib Software. I myself have 20 plus years focused on business process optimization and workflow automation. So I think we have a pretty well-rounded group here to take you through the activity and exercises for today. Adlib has been in business for 23 plus years. We are a multinational, trusted global brand focused largely on regulated industry. We look for the most complicated, most mission-critical, highly repetitive documents, and those are the ones that we focused on. Those documents that are core to your business, those documents that provide tremendous insight to your business, and we pride ourselves on processing billions upon billions of documents throughout our history. We do this with high levels of automation, high levels of accuracy, with full audit trail and lineage. And it's some of the reasons why many of the logos that you see on this slide today have chosen to partner with Adlib. I use the word partner on purpose. We do really believe and value the relationship that we have with our customers. We believe it gives us tremendous customer intimacy, the ability to pivot, keep current with trends. So if at any time during or even after this event, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact myself or Kunal. We really do pride ourselves in voice of customer. And in fact, much of the feature and innovation that you see today during our demonstration were rooted in conversations that we've had with customers such as yourself. So next slide, Kunal. Yeah. So what we're planning on doing today is to walk you through this really quick agenda. This will be mostly done through live demonstration, very little presentation. What we're going to do today is to talk to you specifically about some mission critical processes that you have in life sciences. We're going to be focused on clinical submissions or submission documents. We're going to show you how we can automate the process for validating, classifying, extraction, and helping users interact with these documents, in some human-augmented, human-in-the-loop type process. If you go to the next slide, we'll actually walk you through the day in the life of, in this case, a regulatory document specialist. Now, we do know that this will vary from customer to customer. It will vary even within the line of businesses that you have within your organization. So please don't take this as a fixed use case and workflow that Adlib can only do and satisfy this particular need. This is more of a general use case for a regulatory document specialist. We'll spend a few minutes walking through the day in the life for this, just to kind of set up the demonstration that you're about to see. We're going to break the demonstration into two distinct chunks. The first chunk is going to show you the end user experience from end to end. So imagine, if you will, you are a document specialist. You will now see what your life might be like with Adlib in helping you and assisting you with your day. Then we'll pivot to a more technical conversation and actually showcase how we built and the technology behind this particular use case example and demo. So imagine, if you will, for a minute, you're a document specialist and you are receiving submission documents. And these documents can come from you from many different ways. They can come from an email inbox, which is largely a case for unstructured documents. It can come from your regulatory information management system. It could come from documents that you've authored yourself within your organization. And the first job of this regulatory specialist is to see literally if they, quite frankly, know what the document is, if they can even open it, if they have context and understanding of the clinical trial or the type of submission that might be underway. So this is really just opening and doing an initial review, the cursory ingestion from this document specialist. Now, after that, they typically then have to determine what type of submission that might be. They may have to cross-reference it against an ECTD guide or a TMF hierarchy. or any other hierarchy that you may have in your environment. If they do get the proper classification, they then have to determine what is the appropriate structure for this document and also what metadata might be required to follow this document. So typically when you're doing a submission or you're setting clinical trials documents forward, you typically need a PDF document. It has to have the appropriate headers and footers and table of contents, bookmarks and hyperlinks and table of figures and a whole host of things that are technically required in order to process and submit this document. Once you have that appropriate package, you now have the ability to or desire to extract metadata. So the document is important. The metadata is also equally important. The metadata may be required for the actual submission itself, but probably more importantly is how you might be able to use that extracted metadata in your regulatory information management system or whatever downstream line of business application that you may be using. So these steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 are what we're going to showcase today. But instead of walking you through the manual life of a regulatory document specialist, we're going to be walking you through what this day might look like if Adlib was assisting these document specialists in their task. So, Kadal, if you don't mind flipping to the demo system at this time.
For sure.
And this is where we're going to start the conversation and also focus on the first chunk, which is the end-to-end view of what this might look like for a document specialist. So, Kunal, the first thing I'd like you to show is the type of documents that we'll be showcasing today as part of the demo.
Yeah.
So you have submission 1, 2, and 3 there. Just help us understand what's in there.
Yeah, definitely. So in each submission package, we have a set of documents. Those documents, I'll step through each of them individually just to start, but you can see here that we have a variety of different document types. They're all varying in size, so some are a little smaller than others, some are refined with some deeper content. And if we start to step through what's actually contained in some of these documents here, you can see here that first and foremost, we have a cover letter. This is starting to detail to an FDA officer that we're submitting an IND application. We have some information here about our principal investigator, where the research is being conducted. And as we start to step through the documents, you'll start to see how all of it starts to come together in towards a package that someone might receive. To your point, all sorts of different documents with all sorts of different sort of levels of context and relevance. Olivia Bennett is the name of our principal investigator from the original document that I just opened. You can see here that we actually have her cover letter here, detailing her education, professional experience. We also have moving a little slow here. I'll just speak to it while that's loading up in the background. So we have a couple of PDF files here. This is going to play a factor now in terms of here you can see we have an investigational new drug application form. And then our second PDF is also going to be very, very similarly structured. We also have an investigator brochure here. And now I won't continue to step through every single document page by page, but what you can hopefully start to see is each document sort of plays a role in this overall submission, and each one has relevant factors and how they sort of all come together. And then finally, we do have an image file here, which is a good manufacturing practice certificate for Olivia Bennett, who once again is our principal researcher again, once again.
All right, so that was submission number 1. Is submission 2 and 3? You don't have to go through every document, but are they the same type of submission, or are we processing different types of submissions here?
Yeah, so we're going to be processing different types of submissions over the course of the webinar. So you can see here we have all sorts of different files here. Now, these aren't IND related or cover letter related. We aren't looking at any manufacturing processes here, but instead we're looking at an SOP and SAE forms here. So I could just pop up in one of them if we want to take a look, but we have a standard operating procedure here with some adverse event reporting that details different information about the drug itself and drug reactions. But as you can see, very different in nature from what we saw in submission 1. And similarly in submission 3, what we have here is a document that's actually related to a laboratory improvement certificate and actually making sure that the lab that's being used for this drug testing is certified. And so we could take a step back and start to see now how each submission kind of in its own has its own set of independent documents and varying document types, varying document classifications as well that we might expect down the road. And then the final thing that we have here that I just wanted to pull up is actually a sample floor plan for the laboratory that we're detailing and for that certificate that we saw here in submission 3.
Okay, great. So if you reflect on the day in the life of this specialist, so far really what you've done is you've received a bunch of files, and you can see how complicated this might be.
Yeah.
There's varying file types. You have to open each one to determine if you understand what that file type or that document might be, and then ultimately decide what type of classification it falls into, what submission type, and then start doing your document processing from here. So really what we've just showcased to you is the type of documents that we're receiving. Now, there was like 3 or 4 different document types here. I saw a PDF, I saw Word, I saw PNG. Help us understand the other types of files. Is there any limit that you've seen for what Adlib can process?
No, I haven't. Adlib has a very, very broad support of file types. We support 300 plus different types of files. And so we may not have seen some of those other file types in these submissions, but whether you have Excel files, PowerPoint files, even legacy file formats, to your point that you described up at the top, if you're receiving these various email submissions, some of those could be documents from way, way back, or some of these documents may need to be archived for long-term storage purposes. And Adlib, in my experience, has just been able to handle just about everything.
All right, well, thank you for that. So these are the test files. Now, I'm assuming we have to submit these documents in some way. So in the real life of a document specialist, they may be submitting these from their email inbox. They may be submitting them from the RIM themselves. They may have a web form. For the purpose of this demo, how are we going to be submitting these documents into the process?
So good question. So we'll be using the network folder connector for the purpose of this demonstration. So as you can see here, we have a couple different folders that we just stepped through with our submissions. Those folders will be pulled into an overall branch folder that Adlib is constantly monitoring for incoming documents and jobs, so that once these submissions are ingested into that folder, Adlib will then take those files and start doing something with it. It will start working on actually cleaning up the documents, going back to the day in your day in the life slide if we needed to apply any headers and footers, if we needed to apply any hyperlinks, start extracting and classifying key information. That's where Adlib will start to step in. Of course, that's not our only form of submission when you're moving documents in and out of Adlib, but for the purpose of today's webinar, we will be using a network folder submission.
Okay, perfect. And then the opposite and obvious answer is, where do they go?
Right. So once that's done, similarly, it'll be placed in an output folder. Now you can take a look here and see that we have a folder structure that I've already defined here that's titled out. And this is where I want my files to be placed. Now, right now, we have two sort of separate folders that I've separated this out to. We have a good folder and a bad folder. You can take a look and see that both of those are currently empty. But over the course of the demo, what we're expecting to see is, as we're classifying and extracting our information, based on certain conditions that I may have set up, I may want some of those documents to be routed to good if everything went according to plan. But if something might have tripped up along the way, either with the classification process or the extraction process, I don't want those to all sort of be bunched up with all the good files as well. So sort of beauty and power of Adlib is making sure that you have full control over where those documents go and separating those into a separate folder structure to be able to view exactly what went wrong and why.
Okay, perfect. So just for clarity, we are using this network folder connector today, but in your environment, it would be whatever your line of business application that your end users or these document specialists may be engaging with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I see behind you, you have what looks to be a dashboard, and the values are all zeroed. Help us understand what that dashboard will reflect as we go through the demo.
Yeah, so what we're taking a look at now is similar to what we just stepped through with these empty folders. We also have a dashboard here where, as we start to move information through the system, and as we start to classify our information and we start to extract our information, we want to be able to populate that in a dashboard here that helps you understand, out of all of your documents, how many were classified and how many were auto-classified first and foremost. But we know that we may not always get it right 100% of the time with auto classification. So at any point, was there manual intervention needed? And of course, the biggest piece of information possibly is, were there any failures? What needs to be remediated? Now, one key point that I will mention is, we really want to make sure that you're not just finding out that something failed and now you got to go digging for why. We want to make sure that within this dashboard here, and you'll start to see this populate over the course of the demo, is we're not only showing you that you had X amount of failed extractions or classifications, but if something did fail, help you understand why, so that you as a user are now prepped to better understand, with this set of documents, here's what went wrong and here's where I can potentially take course of action to remediate.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think we're at the point where we can start ingesting files into the processor. Is there anything else you'd like to cover before we go off and do that?
No, I think we're ready to go.
All right, so what Kunal is going to do now is he's going to submit all those documents, all three of those different submission types into the process at the same time. He did that by double clicking that bat file.
Right.
Now, in your environment, this might be an end user triggering the workflow from your line of business application, or it may be a folder that we're actively monitoring. But at this point, the document specialist really hasn't done anything.
Right.
The day in the life is they haven't opened anything. They haven't inspected a single document. They don't need to classify a single document. They're not manually converting files from whatever it was to PDFA. They're not adding headers or footers. What's happening right now is Adlib is going behind the scenes after we've just received those documents and is going through all the steps required to complete that process, steps 1 through 6.
Right.
So I'll give you a moment now to kind of walk through some of the technical things that are happening behind the scenes without actually showing them.
Yeah, exactly. So right now, what we're doing is, again, think back to the day in the life slide, is we're opening all the files received. So similar to how I just kind of went into every folder, clicked on each file, took a look at what was in there. In seconds, Adlib is doing all of that. We're opening up every single file received, and first we're identifying the types of documents that we're getting. So is it a Word document? Is it an Excel document? Was it already submitted as a PDF? And we need to make sure also that it's fully text searchable as well for a couple of reasons. We want to make sure that we can determine, is there any missing information? We want to make sure we can determine, okay, now that we have this fully machine readable document, we can now prep that for extraction and classification. So once that step is done, now we can really start validating and extracting key data to provide context to the submission packages that we saw instead of just submission 1, 2, and 3. And you're kind of getting a bit of a spoiler if you look on the screen on how we're providing that context. And then finally, we want to ensure that essential technical specifications for submission are met. So in these heavily regulated industries, such as life sciences, the FDA or the EMA have very, very specific requirements for what they want in their documents once they're received. So that goes to the font size, that goes to the hyperlink color, and if the hyperlink is underlined, we need to make sure that the blank pages, there aren't any blank pages, that the PDF version is correct. So Adlib is making sure that we go through each and every single one of those steps, validating each and every one of those elements, and then we're assembling the final package and then summarizing all of the content that was received as well, so that in the day of the life of, you haven't done a single thing yet, but if you really want to quickly understand what happened, you have a brief summary that's ready to go for you before you start doing any work at all.
Okay, great. So I see here that as you were talking, there were some folders that populated, with the date and timestamp you can see here. So this is a live demo. This was a clinical safety, if I read correctly, in an IND submission.
Correct.
I see that there's only 2 documents, or at least submissions, that landed here. What happened to the third?
Yeah, so we have 2 good. So as I mentioned up at the top, I wanted to make sure that I filtered out anything that was good from anything that was bad. Now, if we go ahead and take a step back into our bad folder, you can see here that we have 1 final package that was submitted here. So we now have sort of an audit on all 3 of the submissions that we did up at the top. And now we can see here that our lab compliance package, for whatever reason, it was routed to our bad folder. Just looking at our folder structure right now, we know that it was our lab compliance set of documents that landed in the bad. But if we want to find out a little bit more, we can go digging in the dashboard a little bit to dig deeper into that.
All right, perfect. So if you can navigate back to the good folder.
Yeah.
And I see that this dashboard behind you is still sitting at 0. So, as we move through the demo, these numbers should update. So just, hit refresh here and see what's happened.
Yeah. Yeah, so as you can see here, and I'll just put this folder on the right-hand side. So we saw that our lab compliance was in the bad. However, right now it's important to note that we're looking at the classifications. So if you're expecting a failure on this dashboard, the reason why you won't see one is because at the end of the day, everything was correctly classified. Even though this has routed to our bad folder, you can see here that it was correctly identified as our lab compliance package. So what you're seeing on this dashboard right now is out of the 3 packages we submitted, all 3 were classified, all 3 were done in the form of auto classification. So I at no point had to manually intervene and help us classify any one of those packages. And this chart is also going to help you understand you have 1 of each. If you highlight, if you kind of hover your mouse over them, you could kind of see we have IND submission, and we can see that 1 was classified as an IND submission.
All right. So clearly in a real working environment, this would be running, days, weeks, months, years, and you'd get to see the type of classifications and quantities
Right.
that this particular process has automated.
Yeah.
All right. So that's cool. I see clinical safety is the first one. So let's go to the clinical safety folder. And I saw that there was a couple of file types that at least landed in the first one. So maybe open up the PDF first and
Sure.
walk us through what Adlib had automated.
Yeah, so first of all, I'll show you a couple things here. Before we even get into the meat and potatoes of the PDF, you can see at the very start, we've applied a header at the top of our document in red font across the center here. We have our Adlib Life Sciences webinar. We also have that the document was received at the date and time, so on August 5th at 1:18 p.m. You can see along the left-hand side that we've also gone ahead and bookmarked the document. And as you start to step through, you'll also be able to see that all of this is fully text searchable. So it doesn't matter whether we submitted the original PDF. I believe this package had a PDF and a Word document. We took both of those documents, merged them together as one. As I start to scroll through, you'll see that everything was merged together as one into one final package. You can also see here that we have enabled our hyperlinks. All of our hyperlinks are blue and underlined here. And if we scroll down, this is the SOP PDF that we had originally opened, which was also merged as part of this final package.
Okay, so just to be clear, that multiple image PDF Word has all been converted to a single PDF. All documents have been merged. We've added bookmarks, headers, seems to be blue underlined hyperlinks,
Correct.
and converted to PDFA.
Yeah.
Awesome. That in itself is a great productivity enhancement.
For sure.
Now, thank you for the PDF. Now I see there's two other document types there, file types there. So mind you, this is the first time potentially that the document specialist has even opened anything.
Right.
Adlib so far has been the one that has ingested the document, done all the file conversion, and manipulated the document to the point where you see it assembled now. So help us understand what's in that summary.txt file that's right there.
So we'll pop this open and then let me zoom in a little bit. So what you're seeing here now is actually a summary of all the contents that was submitted in each package. So in this case, for submission 2, I want a quick summarization of everything that was submitted. What was the protocol number, the protocol title? We have our principal investigator. And realistically, what this is doing right now is pulling the information from both forms that was submitted. So if you recall, and I can quickly take a step back in case might have slipped our minds. If we go to submission 2, we had an SOP form and an SAE form. You can see as part of the summarization, we have a part of a summarization from SAE related information. We also have some information over here regarding our SOP reference. So this is summarizing all of the information that was submitted within the package. So kind of right at your fingertips, if we go back to the day of the life of, you don't have to lift a finger up until this point. We will go ahead and our LLM will go ahead and actually summarize everything that was done ahead of time before you even start diving into the PDF or anything else at this point.
Okay, so I see this as a text file. It's still not the best user experience. So, how in a true production environment might we be using this information?
Yeah, so realistically, at this point, let me take a step back. Let me go back to our output. At this point, once Adlib has kind of gone through the whole data transformation and classification and extraction process, this final package, it can be viewed the way we're viewing it right now, but it's also at this point now ready to be integrated into your downstream life sciences systems. It's ready to be routed into key applications. So if you want to route this into your clinical trial management systems or in your regulatory submission platforms, this information is all now ready to be routed to those line of business applications and is fully machine readable. It's fully prepped for different AI enabled processes down the road as well, which a lot of people are starting to leverage today. So there are various different ways to actually be able to effectively consume this information and start using it downstream.
All right, so you mentioned downstream line of business applications. Clearly that summary is not enough detail and data to feed a line of business application, which probably leads you to that JSON file that's sitting there. So why don't you walk us through what's in that particular file?
For sure. I'll zoom in a little bit here as well. Is that readable?
Yes, it looks great.
Awesome. So what we have here now is outside of the summarization, this is where we started to set up now for the extraction process. I want you to be able to go into my documents now and pull out very, very specific attributes. So what's my protocol number? And you can see here that we have examples like the protocol number, where you're just pulling out something like this, where you have your date reported, pulling out a date here. But we also have something like the study title. And you can see here that the study title, or even let's take a look under event details at the narrative summary. You can see here that we're not just grabbing sort of one word or one date or one little string of characters here, but we're actually pulling out entire summarizations from the document based on what it is that you're looking to pull out. So again, right at your fingertips, and again, now this is a JSON file, this is definitely much more consumable downstream. all of this information is right at our fingertips now, and all of that was extracted from our SOP file or SAE file. We have all of our regulatory references here at the bottom, but this JSON file and all of our extraction prompting did a really, really powerful job in pulling out all of the information that we were looking for from that entire submission package.
Okay, great. So we've walked through one submission so far. I'm not asking the audience to remember every single metadata field, but I'm assuming that each submission type has different fields or values that might be important.
Correct.
So maybe this would be a good idea to jump to, that second submission
Yeah.
and to see the differences here.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll start with the PDF. Now, if you remember, this was our first submission that we started walking through. We had the most set of documents. So this started with the cover letter, which was detailing that we're submitting an initial IND application. It's had the name of our principal investigator and where the research was being done. As you start to scroll down, you can also start now see Olivia Bennett's cover letter that was included. As we continue to step through the document, we had our FDA 1571 and 1572 forms. You can see here, this is hyperlink enabled. If I pop open the left-hand side here, you can see all of our bookmarks as well. So similar to what we saw on the previous example, we have once again merged all the information, applied our headers, applied our hyperlinks, applied our table of contents, and made sure that this package is now fully consumable. And then similarly, we do now have a summary as well, which is going to go ahead and summarize all of the information that was received across all of the documents that was included in that package.
All right, this is spectacular. So hopefully by now you can start to see some of the efficiency and productivity gains that Adlib has driven through the ingestion of the documents, through the classification of the documents, the adding the header, the footer, the watermarks, the table of contents, table of figures, and a whole host of other things that we didn't show as part of this demo. And then we went through a large language model process where we prompted that engine to summarize and extract the critical fields that are required for that particular submission type.
Right. And so the other thing to quickly add on to that is, one of the other powerful things about this technology is going back to the day in the life, our regulatory document specialist didn't have to open every single document, understand what the submission was, and then place it in the appropriate folder structure, because submission one's attributes that we extracted here, as you can see on the screen, are not the same as what we extracted out of submission two. But we did not require someone to physically go into the documents and know what type of attributes to extract against what type of submission packages. Our technology on the back end was intelligent enough to route in all the documents, open up each one of them, as I mentioned, understand what it is that we're working with, and then based on that understanding, start to extract the relevant information based on that submission type. So these attributes, of course, we don't have anything related to SOP or SAE here, but we now have our clinical site information, our protocol information. We saw the investigator information with Dr. Olivia Bennett, so on and so forth.
All right, this is a great help. Hopefully the audience is following. Now I see here we've been focused on all the good things so far. These are the two submission types that we had planned to work on purpose, and demo gods left us alone, and we have gotten through that good part. Now I see there was a bad folder there. So can you help us understand? A few moments ago, you said that just don't put it in the bad folder, but help us understand why it landed in the bad folder. So how might that occur?
Yeah, so what I'll do is, before we dive into this folder, I'll actually go back to our dashboards. Now, we already spoke to and saw the classification dashboard, how everything did classify successfully. If we go ahead and move over to our extraction dashboard, you'll be able to see now that out of the 3 extraction processes that we submitted, 2 were successful, and we just stepped through those 2. Now, the one that failed, we see here, we already know from our folder structure was lab compliance, but what we're doing here is we're not just saying lab compliance failed. We're actually giving you the reason as to what failed and why it failed. So in this case, lab compliance failed because we detected that the compliance certificate expired. Now, what I'll do is in a moment when you're ready, we can go ahead and actually pop open the document to see where it detected that that compliance certificate expired. But what you're able to see very quickly is just at a glance, as soon as I jumped into this dashboard, I was able to quickly understand and recognize what went wrong. I didn't have to go combing through my documents or combing through any summaries to understand what happened. The dashboard really quickly populates that information for you, so it's ready for you at your fingertips.
All right, outstanding. So why don't we do that now? Can you go look at that PDF?
Yep. All right, so what you're going to see here is, once again, we have all of our information that was merged. We saw the sample floor plan. We saw that lab certificate. Now, what you see here is we had this application for certification for the lab. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit because it's really easy to miss. and potentially to the human eye, really easy to miss. As you can see here, all of our big information, our general information, we have all of our addresses, telephone numbers, all of that's super easy to see. If I scroll down a little bit and I'll zoom in even further, we have sort of the fine print over here at the very bottom of this page. And if you actually start to take a look under this disclosure statement, you can see that this lab certificate was good until March 31st, 2024. So this has now been expired and therefore is no longer valid. And now potentially to the human eye, very easy to just kind of go past that and miss it. This is really the only place within this document where this expiration date was listed. But thankfully, because if I go ahead and quickly jump over to our JSON file, thankfully, because one of the things that we wanted to detect and pull out was the form expiration date, our intelligence was able to, or our intelligence model was quickly able to catch that this is indeed past expiration date and then populate that information for you within the dashboard. So you're not moving forward with a regulatory submission with a really, really big red flag here sort of looming on you with this expiration.
All right, thank you for that. That's a great addition. I got some back channel information that the screens are too small. So for the rest of the demo, when possible, let's start zooming in a little more on the application, maybe the words themselves. Thank you.
For sure.
So clearly we have now a failed extraction. It was done because of the certificate has expired. How might the end user interact? So this document specialist, how might they interact with this document and potentially rectify?
Yeah, so what we have is I'll quickly jump over to our Adlib interface, and what you'll be able to see is we have a couple different ways where you can interact with it. Now, a document specialist or maybe an administrator, let me focus on, they have the ability to jump through our entire platform. And when we get to the more technical part of the demonstration, I can dive through these screens in detail. But you can see here that we have a section called tasks. Now, if I log out of my administrator role and I log back in as a reviewer, you'll see here that the entire interface is actually just that tasks page. So as a reviewer, really what your job is to do and what Adlib has geared this page for you is anything that goes into that failed folder and into that failed human in the loop queue or into that failed submission package is going to come into this human in the loop queue. Now, if I click this little eyeball here, what you'll see is now my information is going to populate over here. I'll see on the right-hand side the PDF that I was working with. And on the left-hand side, you'll see that my form expiration date is actually highlighted as red. And this is trying to flag my attention that this PDF not only failed because of that attribute being invalid, as we saw on the dashboard with the compliance certificate expiring, but this is now where a human can actually interact with this document and move to rectify whatever information they need to.
All right, that's amazing. So I think we're at the point now where this kind of concludes the specialist's work.
Yeah.
So just to play it back really briefly, steps 1 through 6 were largely automated by Adlib.
Right.
So instead of having to open the document, determine what it is, classify it, then determine what metadata fields are required, then add the headers, footers, watermark, table counts, all that stuff. What you saw here in just a matter of moments, all that went from 1 to 6 with near zero human intervention.
Right.
The only time a human would need to get involved is if there's an error to correct, or if there's a field that's flagged so critical that you want the human to review 100% of the time. But at this point, the document specialist is really here to help assist with error correction and to augment the process, not necessarily to drive the process. Is there anything you'd like to add before we conclude the end of the life demo and move to the more technical side?
No, I think that's perfectly accurate.
Okay, so we're at the point now where we're going to shift gears to the second tranche of demo, which is the more technical side. We hope that everyone can hang in there. We'll take the Q&A at the end. There's a Q&A panel at the bottom of your Zoom. If there's any questions you'd like to submit, that's the best place to do it. We'll make certain we leave time to resolve any questions at the end. So what you're looking at now is the Adlib administration console. This is the location where whoever's setting up the workflow and configuring it would do their work. So the first question I have for you, Kunal, is we were talking about the large language model, and you were also talking about how different document types can have different values extracted. Yeah. So can you briefly review how that might work within Adlib?
Yeah, definitely. So in our administration console now, you can see along the left-hand side, we have different options. We just saw the tasks page, for example. Now, really here in this extraction settings is where we can start to define exactly what it is that we want to do with these documents. So you saw a couple things in the demo. You saw us, first of all, extract attributes. You saw us do a summarization. We can do a bunch of other things as well, such as a sentiment analysis. We can do a translation, but let's focus on the attribute extraction first, just going back to your question. What we're able to do is actually define in this output definitions page, we're able to define the outputs that we're actually looking for within our documents. So let me open this lab submission form, for example. I can now start to define in my lab submission form, I want to extract a set of attributes. And the attributes I want to extract, you can see here. So I want to extract my facility name, I want to extract the facility address, the director name, the certificate type, and really being able to define what you want to extract is as simple as clicking on add attributes and then adding in what it is that you want to extract. So if I wanted to get my expiration date, and then if I wanted to provide, for example, a hint to my LLM, and this is another really, really cool thing, is that you don't need to be an expert at coding or learn any sort of programming languages to be able to prompt this for success. If I wanted to very simply say, this is normally in the fine print, or something along those lines, I can really just speak to the chatbot in plain human English, just like that, to better prep the model to find the attributes that I'm looking for. We have a couple different fields down here as well that allow us to do some human in the loop interaction as well, but I'll pause there first of all and see if that answers your initial question.
Yeah, it does. So I guess the point of this is you don't need to be a data scientist or even an IT specialist to help design the prompts. You're literally typing in the attribute in normal human language
Yep.
and providing hints as necessary in, once again, normal human language.
Right.
So anyone at any time has the ability to interact and add documents or improve documents that may be in your process.
Right.
All right, thank you for that. We can cancel out of this window. One of the next things, let's just kind of go through the day in the life. Step number one was kind of this ingestion, where we had email and we had RIM and we had a whole host of other things. So how might Adlib be able to ingest documents into the system, and where might that be configured?
Yeah, so if we could take a look on our left-hand side again, we're going to go to our system settings. And if we go to the section here called sources, what you'll see here, if I pop open this little icon, is we have all sorts of different source types that we're able to configure directly within the interface. So like I mentioned in today's demo, you saw us use a network folder connector. So really what I set up is jobs will come in here, jobs will go out here, and then please populate based on good or bad. But we also have the ability, for example, to use various different source types like Documentum, if we wanted to use Generis Kara, if we wanted to use a network, or if we wanted to use an email connector, or if we wanted to really talk to Microsoft Exchange and pull like an Outlook inbox, we have the ability to configure all those directly from the interface as well. It's just in the purpose of today's demo, we really focused on the network folder connector.
Okay, and is this the full list of source types, or is this a subset of the ingestion sources that we may be able to support?
So this is a subset of the ingestion sources that we may leverage. We also have, for example, our APIs, where a lot of where a lot of our customers and partners potentially submit from directly into our APIs. And then also as middleware, what we sort of pride ourselves on is being able to connect to all of your document management systems, or being able to connect to other potential repositories of choice. We really excel and thrive in making sure that we're able to connect to the systems of need.
All right, outstanding. Thank you for that. I guess moving on to also in step number one was email.
Yeah.
In my experience with life science, this seems to be where most companies get tripped up. Email is largely unstructured. It has many things that also trip up the process. There may be information in the body of the email, the subject of the email. There may be attachments. There may be multiple attachments. Attachments may be different file types. So help us understand how Adlib can assist with ingestion of email.
Yeah, so we have an instruction set here that's actually already set up. And for those unfamiliar, the instruction set setting or page here in Adlib is really now where you're defining a lot of what you saw in the webinar. So those bookmarks, those headers, this is where that magic sort of happens. And this is where you define what it is that you want to do to your documents. And so we have an instruction set here that was actually geared to be able to pull incoming emails as well. If I pop open this convert to PDF email setting that we have here, and if I just quickly go along the left-hand side, you can see that we have a huge host of different settings here. Under convert to PDF email is one of those options. If I click this little pencil icon, you can see that Naturally, what Adlib will do first and foremost is it will take in everything that was as part of the email. So not just the subject line, not just the body, but also any attachments as well with the email. That's just step number one, whether it's quote unquote enabled or not. I don't think we have an area to disable it. We'll pull in all of that information. We also want to make sure that we have you give you the ability to customize whatever it is that you would like while working on the email submission process. So whether you want to enable your hyperlinks, the PDF paper size that you want in your output, how you want the date to be formatted. You can also actually format. So in the email body itself, you can see, or in the email itself, you can see information around like the from, the to, the CC. You actually have the ability to format. Do you just want to display that as default? Do you want the display name and the email, or just one or the other? But really giving the user full control on, once you have that output PDF back on the other end, how much of that email do you want to preserve? How much of that email do you want to reformat, and making sure that we don't miss any contents that was submitted in the original email itself.
All right, great. Now, it seems to be a lot of flexibility in its configuration. Now, one of the things you did in the demo was bookmarks. I think that was in step 3 or 4, or maybe both. So the bookmark in one of those documents was rather complex. It was, dozens, if not hundreds of bookmarks. That likely would have taken someone a long, long time to do. So you can help us understand, how that might be configured and automated for this particular process.
Yeah, and so what I'll do is I'll actually just do it live here. So if you look along the left-hand side in our convert to PDF section, you can see here that we just took like a email to PDF. We also have one here for Word to PDF. And if I just drag and drop that over to the right-hand side and click the pencil icon, that very, very complex set of bookmarks that I defined here, I'll show you how I did it. I hit this checkbox and then Adlib did the rest. So once you have Adlib go in here and define that you want bookmarks enabled, or you want hyperlinks enabled, and for example, you want your hyperlinks to be blue with underlines, it's as simple as just clicking a couple checkboxes. Once again, to your point about the customization, checking off using drop downs, what exactly you want to be customized, or to the level of customization that you want. And that's it. Once you hit OK and save, any document that you submit time in and time out again will undergo the exact rules that you specified here. So quite simply, for that sort of complex set of bookmark trees that we saw in some of those bigger PDFs, was literally just by hitting this checkbox here and enabling it, and then Adlib does the rest behind the scenes.
Okay, so with a few checkbox and stroke marks at the admin side, from this point forward, every document specialist doesn't have to worry about bookmarks or hyperlinks or headers or footers or whatever else might be required for your internal user submission. So very powerful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think step 5 had a notion of validation. So we know in our years of working with life science that there's many submissions to the FDA or EMA, whoever your governing body might be, that are declined not because some result in the clinical trial was poor, but that your technical submission of your document was incorrect or inconsistent. So how might Adlib be able to assist somebody conforming with the regulations and requirements for the FDA and EMA and any other body?
Yeah, so what you could see here is we have another rule here now. That's our validation rule. And actually what I'll do is I'll actually just delete this so we could kind of step through it live again. If you are coming to this interface for the first time, you first of all don't have to be an expert in finding everything. We do have this searchability where I can just type in validate. You can see here that my list filtered, and I'll drag and drop my validation setting to the right-hand side. Once I pop that open, we have the ability to do a couple things here. Similar to how we had our good and bad folder for the last demo we just saw, we want to make sure that you have the ability to specify a reporting folder for your validation. So if anything failed validation, go here and give me a report as to why. And if it was successful, go to this folder. And if we start to scroll down and step through the other settings that we have here, this is now a huge different variety of settings that we can actually define. And a lot of this was inspired by direct feedback from customers and research that we did on different specifications that are required for submission to make sure that we're hitting sort of the major checklist of items. So whether it loads on the first page or not, whether you have blank pages in your document. And once again, it's hitting a checkbox and saying true. I want to make sure that there's no blank pages. But this experience here was hitting a checkbox and saying, yes or no, true or false. We want to make sure that this also remains customizable as we can make it. So if you go to the file size limit, for example, Yes, we want to validate file size limit. And yes, we know that the FDA may have a set file size limit and the AMA and this different governing body may have their own, but we don't just want to make it a checkbox with a preset number. So what we actually allow you to do is come in here and define the number that you want to or what your file size limit should be. We have a couple different things as well. So we understand that I believe off the top of my head that the FDA requires maybe PDF versions of 1.4 or 1.7. So very simply type in what you need, space them out with a comma if you have multiple inputs. But what we're really starting to do here now is build out exactly what that submission checklist looks like and what we want Adlib to validate for, blue hyperlinks, so on and so forth. I won't step through every single one unless you're curious on one more than the other. But now what we're really enabling you to do is not just use Adlib to create these compliant documents, but use Adlib to give you that submission ready confidence as well to say, are you actually good to go for submission? And if not, here's why. We detected a blank page on page 7, or we saw a black hyperlink on page 52, something of that nature.
Okay, so this is pretty powerful itself. What we've seen work really well is instead of running your validation step at the very, very last moment prior to submission, the nice thing about the way this works is at the same time your documents are being rendered or your initial submission is walking through the process that you just witnessed, that we're validating at that time.
Yeah.
So at any point during the process, we can highlight and identify things that may be potential errors that the FDA or EMA may flag.
Right.
Okay, thank you. You can cancel out of here. Now, one of the last things we saw with the end-to-end demo was this dashboard, and that dashboard was for somebody that was a document specialist. Now, there must be dashboards that the admin might use to determine how the system is doing, how it's performing, what type of documents it's processing, and just to get a general understanding of the health of the system.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a couple different things that we provide here. One, first and foremost, is just a traditional admin experience of making sure that as documents are being submitted, you have sort of a live view of their status. So how are they doing? How long are they taking? What was their ultimate status? If I need to go back and see what the document itself was, what submission package did I submit and when? But we also have this concept of historical analytics as well. So not necessarily real time, but sort of historically, how have I done? So right now we're looking at July 15th to August 5th. Maybe I can set that back to July 1st. First of all, I'll mention, I'm just looking at the last month's view. This dashboard has no limit. So if you've been using this since July 2024 and you want to see how you've done since then, you can go ahead and filter that far back. But realistically, what we want to be able to prep you for is information that allows you to understand over this period of time, how many jobs have I processed and how many pages did that potentially break down into? How successful have I been in terms of my overall success rate with the number of documents that I put through? How efficiently are those moving through? So from the time that a job was received in the queue to the time that it was picked up for processing, are my customers waiting forever for it to even be picked up for processing? How long is it taking to actually work on the documents itself? And then we also have some charts here that sort of let you do a bit of a trend analysis to see, from an hourly or day of the week or monthly standpoint. Of course, I'm only looking at 2 months here, so not the best, but how have I really done over that period of time? Are there any peaks, valleys, potential upscaling of my server infrastructure that I need to do based on these analytics that I'm seeing, and generally how efficiently I've been processing my documents over time?
Yeah, great. So, with this view and the dashboard view you saw earlier, somebody that's really trying to tune the system can get a really good understanding of what file types might be failing, what
Yeah.
issues within a document might be causing alarm. So over time, with this data, you have the ability to improve the system and improve the system to the point where, as the more you use it, the more effective it gets for your particular organization. All right, outstanding. So I think we're running short on time. So if we don't mind jumping back to the PowerPoint and skip the workflow slide, we'll jump right past that one if you don't mind.
Jump past that one, you said?
Yeah, please. Yeah, just for there you go. So what you've just seen, and this is like kind of in closing before we get to Q&A, is how quick this might be. That day in the life of this document specialist, they may have taken 20, 30 minutes to process a single submission. And while we were talking, we processed 3, classified, extracted, summarized, prepped the document in PDFA, and all a host of other things there. So you completely see how much quicker this could be done, how less time consuming it will be for your end users, and how much more they can get done in their day. It also makes it that much more effective for them where they feel more productive in their day and not so much doing busy work and prepping docs, but actually helping the business process by correcting errors that are slowing down your drug to market or your trial. Next slide, please. All right, what we did today was focus on just a few use cases. Now, you would imagine over 23 plus years focused in regulated industry and more specifically life sciences as our #1 industry, that there's many things that you can do here. So just think about all the documents that you have within your environment and the manual touch points that you have people either prepping the document or making decisions on document. And if they're actually physically extracting information for downstream processes, that as well. So here we focus on document ingestion from a clinical perspective, but SOP of lifecycle management, batch processing, lab test results, QA, manufacturing process, the list goes on. If it's document intensive and that document contains data that would benefit your line of business, please let us know and consider Adlib for use cases beyond what you've seen. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this is a call to action, should you be willing. Kunal is on our pre-sales team. So if you were impressed, as I always am, with the engagement here, that's the type of engagement you should expect by scanning that QR code there. That will get you direct access to your Adlib sales representative, for which Kunal is a great representative, and there's many people just like him. So if you're interested in talking further or understanding more, please scan that QR code. With the few minutes that we have left, I'll jump to the QA panel. If you haven't submitted your questions, you still have time to do so. There are a handful of questions in there. The first one, I don't know if this was in order of submission, but it says the AI summary looks great. Is the output trustworthy, and how accurate is it? All right, Kunal, you want to step in, or do you want me to lead?
I could take a first pass at that. The output is for the summarization, the output is pretty trustworthy, I would say, in terms of being able to. We've run various different demonstrations and various different tests, and overall, the summarization does a really good job in terms of covering the outputs received for every single document across the entire submission package. Now, in terms of accuracy, I would say that Anthony, I'm potentially tempted to go on the tangent of overall LLM accuracy. Would you want me to step through that, or do you think just in the terms of summarization, kind of leave it at that?
I think the accuracy is as good really as the LLM. However, Adlib does significant improvement above the baseline LLM.
Yeah.
And that improvement is driven by the pre-processing of the document that Adlib is able to do. So by breaking down the document to individual objects, such as handwriting, tables, embedded objects, even text layer and image layer, we can improve the accuracy of the LLM. And Adlib is in a unique position to do that because we're the ones that have built the PDF, as you just saw, as part of this demonstration. So giving the LLM individual objects instead of an entire PDF or entire single document is a much better approach to drive accuracy for your large language model. The next question is, how do you work with an existing RIM AI? So question is, how do you work with an existing RIM's AI? Can you leverage our Viva AI for classification and other automation? Once again, I'll allow you to lead.
Do you mind taking the lead on that one, Anthony?
Yeah, sure. No worries. I always give you first right of refusal here. So with Adlib, our go-to-market is around bring your own AI tech stack. So all the AI companies, as you would imagine, have a standard for allowing you and other solutions to interact with that tech stack. So Adlib is purpose-built to work with Viva, with any other RIMS AI, whether it be OpenText, whether it be OpenAI, whether it be Anthropic, whether it be John Snow Labs. We have the ability to route our content through setting up the sources, the context, and the prompt engineering that Kunal briefly walked you through as part of this demo. So engaging with your existing RIMS AI is likely not a problem. Okay, with stuff being moved around here, can I connect multiple sources to the same instruction set, or is it a one-to-one relationship?
I can tackle that. Sorry, I was answering a question in the chat there. So I got thrown off with the typing. But yes, we are able to configure multiple sources into the same instruction set. We have a lot of flexibility in terms of either connecting multiple sources to the same instruction set or configuring multiple sources against various different instruction sets because some people may want to configure their metadata differently based on where the documents are being received from. And then some people may want to have multiple, maybe based on where the documents are being received from, have multiple sources undergo the same set of rules each and every time through the system. So it's really up to the user on how they want that configured, but we don't have restrictions one way or the other.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question, technical, do you have limits on file sizes? Question mark. Can you process a submission that's thousands of pages long, and how long would it take?
I have never personally seen a document that failed because it was too big or because of file size. So I would say that we don't, I wouldn't say we have issues with file size, or I've ever personally witnessed any issues with file size. In terms of how long it would take, I mean, that's a tricky one to answer, just really because we've had documents that very, very intense and large submissions. For one of our demos, we had a like over 200-page document in submission that was classified, extracted, that was completed in less than a minute, I believe. But again, really, there's so many variables that go into how long that 1,000-page document will take. Are you OCRing it? Are you applying headers and footers? Are you applying bookmarks? Are you just doing a simple convert to PDF? So there's a lot of different variables that would impact how long it would take. My best recommendation is our team is always willing to kind of take in, if you're interested in engaging Adlib, our team is always willing to take some of your sample documents and run those through the system so you can actually see how your documents do when processed through Adlib, how long they take. And so if that's something that's of more interest, that would definitely be my recommendation in terms of next steps.
Okay, perfect. I would just add to that, there are certain routines that are more document or sort of like CPU and RAM intensive. So file conversion, it's not terribly intensive, but things like OCR are resource intensive. So I would say also the way you configure your virtual machine or your physical server also impacts the speed at which your document may be processed. Adlib has the ability to do things like distributed OCR, where we can break your document down into smaller chunks. So instead of that 1,000-page document, maybe it's 10 100-page documents, and those 10 documents are processed at the same exact time in parallel, and then stitched together at the end, so we can compress the amount of time it takes for those resource-intensive processes. Okay, and then last one, Kunal, for you, is says doc validation is very useful. This can save us weeks of delays, exclamation point. Cool, thank you. So once validated, can you fix the errors in the output file?
Yeah, so a couple different ways to look at that. First and foremost, Adlib, it's interesting. Adlib's kind of bread and butter has been, this one-to-one pixel perfect rendition, and what you see is what you get. So historically, we've kind of stayed away from manipulating too much in the document or fixing elements of the document. So I would say in the first cut of the validator, we don't have this concept of automated corrections, just the detections. Now, what I will say is, using Adlib, as you saw, and happy to go through it again if you wanted a personalized demo, but hopefully you saw over the course of the rules that we were going through, we have the ability to not only validate those rules that you saw on the validator screen, but every single one of those rules is also something you can actually do to your documents using Adlib. So if you want to make your hyperlinks blue, you can do that. If you want to enable bookmarks, if you want to change your font color, like we have settings that enable you to do each and every one of those things. So if you were to run your validation, see that you potentially had gaps in any one of those areas, and then wanted to use Adlib to rectify those documents, you're fully covered to be able to do so. Now, we are always still looking for ways to innovate, add to our roadmap, and explore potentially what we want to do in the future. And so as part of that, if the validator is something that's of interest, and if we want to dive into a deeper conversation on potentially expanding what we can validate for, what corrections may look like in the future, then that's a conversation that we're always open to having as well, just to see how we can continue to innovate.
All right, thank you, Kyle. That does conclude the Q&A portion, and that was at the end of our Q&A, so just timing, nice. Kunal, as always, thank you for your expertise and thoughtful explanation. Also for the audience, thank you for your participation. This will mark the end of our webinar. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to scan the QR code and contact your Adlib representative. Once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.